Alrighty. Mindful Men, we are live.
How you doing, Viraj?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Well, good, blessed. As you know, we've just literally come out of our session, and I'm looking behind me because I'm staring at the garden trying to get some vitamin D. I haven't been at the house yet, so I'm looking forward to just having my normal walk at Bentley Priory. So yeah.
Yeah.
And I know you've got you've got a big birthday to go to. So yeah.
We have a very special birthday coming up later on today. So looking forward to that. But yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it kind of touches on the topics of like what we're talking about today, which is auditing your relationships. And, you know, if you're watching, happy birthday, Mum. See you in a bit. But also in general, like, you know, where are our relationships? And actually, what do we define as relationships?
Never met your mum, but happy birthday to your mum if she is watching. So yeah, I'm sure you're gonna have a blessed one. Yeah. So I guess today was a really interesting one. So for those of you, oops, was it? Yeah, I don't know what happened there. So to say that today was an interesting one because we're talking about the topic of auditing your relationships, and I think it's a question that we'll post actually on the live. Like, what does auditing your relationships mean to anybody who's actually listening? Because what we found out in the audience of the Mindful Men's Club, to all of our men who were on the live just recently, is that actually means something completely different to each individual person. And it was just fascinating to understand what auditing a relationship means to each individual person. So to me, it means something different. To Viraj, it means something different. To all the men that join, it means completely something different. And I think it's a fascinating one because I think I could just kick off, right? So for me, auditing your relationship. So what does that mean to me personally? So it means, where am I in the sphere of everything around me and who I am? Where am I actually channeling my energy? So whether that's energy on relationships with other people, energy with relationships with myself, my relationship with money, you know, my relationship with nature, or the space and the environment I'm in. And I think auditing your relationship is such a deep, it's a massive subject, but what we found is quite consciously, we always allude to relationships being person-centric. And actually, because we're people, right? We're humans. So it's going to be person-centric. But actually, quite often, relationships could be non-person-centric. And it's about how often do we audit those. And by auditing, we're not talking about balance and check sheet and numbers necessarily per se. We're talking about the word, I think a strong word that came about was, quote unquote, having the awareness of who it is you're spending time with and energy with, and how you're doing it, and is it serving that person or those persons, and is it serving you? And I think one of the men mentioned about, you know, it's really, really important, as we all know, it's your product or environment of that classic saying of the 5 or 6 people that you surround yourself with, so the 6 degrees of separation, another way to actually reference it. So who are you spending time with, guys? Like, you know, and are you spending, and is one of those 5 or 6 people yourself? As weird as that question sounds, meaning, are you including yourself in that scenario? So yeah, it's just a massive, interesting subject. We could have talked for hours.
I mean, that's just one area, right? The relationships you have with people, but then also, if you look at things like time, with money, with energy, with space, environment, like, what does that relationship look like? And if that were a person, what would that interaction be? And that's a whole nother sort of intangible element to relationships. I mean, money's the big one. We all have a relationship with money that's tied into a money story at some point, and that now defines how we see money. Whereas, as you and I both kind of get, is that money is just energy, and it's how that energy occurs for you, and then how you're able to use that energy to serve, or use it as a tool, or actually see money as a barrier to something, or see the lack of something, the lack of money being there as a reason why your energy gets drained, where you're not necessarily wanting to be committed. I just want to say hello to a few people here. Hey, Yuvraj. Hey, Dawn. Hey, Dharmesh. Thank you for joining us. Let us know in the comments if you'd actually like to join Manoj and I on screen live to discuss this topic as well. You're more than welcome to add some questions in the chat, or you can be invited to come on video with us as well and share your perspectives on what auditing your relationships looks like. And what does relationships mean to you? What does auditing mean to you? I had a really fascinating discussion this morning on the entire subject, on auditing relationships and where people see their relationships with people, their careers, their jobs, their managers, but then also from an energy time perspective as well. So yeah, love to either invite you onto video with us or via chat. All good. Keep posting your questions and sharing. I think what was interesting about today, Manoj, was that, again, people came in with, we look at the list of things people were talking about, their inner circle, their inner communication, managing risk, sex, romance, different segments, family. And yet there was still a whole other area where people didn't realize that they had a relationship with.
No, absolutely. And just going back to your initial comment about if you do want to come live with us on this, the reason we did that is because we, as the people behind Mindful Men's Club, were actually auditing, and there you go, just nice pun there, just put it in there. We were auditing how we do things, and we thought actually, and there was a couple of, I can't remember the names, so apologies, women who were really, really highly engaged on our Facebook Live 2 weeks ago. So we thought, well, and one of them commented saying, I'd love to jump on a conversation with you guys. So then that's why we've been auditing how we do things, and we've created this Facebook Live. So if you guys actually want to feel comfortable in your own skin, hopefully some of you do, you can join us actually on this live, on video. You just need to actually put a message on that and saying you want to join, and then Viraj will add you in, and then we'll start to get more screens, I guess, right? And it becoming an interactive session within an interactive session. So we've definitely been doing a lot of auditing. I think Viraj mentioned something about, oh yeah, you mentioned money, didn't you? The relationship with money. So we did a topic on money mindset, and the people who attended and the people who missed out, or you can call it FOMO, fear of missing out, suggested that why don't we do another one? So we've got another session now on money mindset, and that's going to be a deep one because the current climate that we're in right now, it's hurting a lot of people, right? In many different ways, physically, spiritually, monetary, job losses. So the topic of money mindset and how to actually understand and have awareness and how to attract financial abundance. We won't go too much into that because you're going to get me started on that financial abundance. We're doing another session on that. So, but back to this point is auditing your relationship. It's a fascinating subject, because when we did almost like a virtual survey without doing a survey, what we realized is that probably was it 80% of the men, Viraj, referenced auditing your relationship with either other people, so the people that they have the relationship with, or themselves, which is obviously a massive area. But the other area that we're coming at it through is that what's your relationship with nature? What's your relationship with your environment? Environment being the space who you're living with, like the area you're living with, the house you're in. What's your relationship with money? What's your relationship with space, as weird as that sounds? And what I mean by that is, not to go too woo on our audiences, do you guys give yourself enough space to breathe and to process and to just be and just to be you? And one of the things we talked about is that if you were to do almost like get a pen and paper and draw like a massive circle on an A4 piece of paper, and you were to put it into segments like an orange is segmented, and understand where your time is actually spent, time and energy, I promise you'll be shocked. You will literally be shocked about where you spend your time and energy. So if you divide 24 hours by the day, and you say 8 hours you're sleeping, give or take on average, etc. In 8 hours you're working or you're in your business, that's 16 hours. And then you might be meditating for an hour, and then you realize that you've got Netflix for another hour, and then you realize that actually you don't have any time for you, whereas you've got an abundance of time. It's just you choose where to spend that time. So that was an interesting one, I think. Yeah.
I mean, there's so many ways you can really break this down, and I feel that this isn't a conversation that we have often enough. But too often we're almost at the effect of what's going on around us. With, let's just take people. That's the most obvious one. Is that there are certain situations where the relationship isn't good with a particular person, and the word ownership of that relationship came up a lot. Is actually there's something that we have that we just need to own, that this relationship isn't the way I would like it to be, for example, but then saying, okay, well, what can I do about it? And seeing the other person as whole and complete as they are, and yet you still have the ownership of the situation, because there is something you can do about it, and you can address or take the time out.
There's
and I think that was a very powerful realization for a few people.
Yeah, it's a deep one, right? Like quite often we think and we go through life, and I say go through life. It's almost like, you know, there's I'm not sure if you had this as a kid. You know, the sand timers where you just flip around and it kind of grains of sand just flow through.
Yeah.
And so that's why I just had the picture in my head when I said the words out loud. Go through life. It's like we go through life, and it's almost like we let time slip through our hands and slip through us, but actually we have an abundance of time. I mean, I'm saying that with a bit of sensitivity based on everyone's individual situation, but we have an abundance of time and choice of where we spend that time and energy and who we spend that time and energy. And I think back to what Riraj was saying is that about relationships, there's no relationship that's perfect, right? Let's just get it out there, right? There's no relationship that's perfect. It's a journey, and it could be, for some people it's an uphill struggle. For some people it's skiing down the ski slope, and for some people it's ducking and diving, and so for some people it's like, you know, it's in waves. However you want to describe it, it's personal, right, to everyone. But there is no linear description of a relationship, because it's you know, if you doodle it, it will be like this doodle that you that you do literally, that goes anywhere, like a impossible maze, right, that overlaps and overlaps. But I think the essence of what we talked about is you have choice, and where you think you don't have choice, it's because you haven't created that space to internalize and to breathe and to separate between what is this thing that is going through that you think, oh, I don't have enough time to exercise or go in the gym, or I don't have enough time to actually start a new business, or I don't have enough time to actually negotiate how to get a pay rise. Yes, you do. Or I don't have enough time to actually exceed in my career. Yes, you do. Or I don't have enough time for me, which is the most important to some degree, right? Like what, in 7 days in a week, like seriously, like I've got on my phone, I've actually got color coded entries into what is me time, what is client time, what is family time, what is personal development time. And do you know what? Sounds so simple and trivial, but until I did that, I was like, wow, I've got so many energy leaks in my life.
Now, check this out, right? Now, let's take, this is such a good example of time. If time was a person, what would that look like? Who are people that we do that to?
And I love that question, right? So let me just process that. So ask me the question again.
Yeah. So you're talking about the relationship with time and how, you know, it needs to be structured, organized, segmented, say boundaries, right? So if you take the context of that relationship with time and the way that's being, how would that be any different to a relationship that you may have with a person?
And great question. Obviously, it's personal to everyone. So let me just think about that properly. So how would that? Okay, so let me take the real example, right? So, why don't you give me an example? Put me on the spot.
Yeah. So I mean, as you were saying, like we could be, let's say our partners, for example, right? That's an easy one to look at. We look at they're always around, like time. They're always with us. But yet, how often do we create time to do something meaningful? We have stories about, oh, we have no time. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. There's this, there's that. I've got to find me time and all that stuff. So that's a relationship that we're creating with a person under the premise of we have no time. But actually, that's the relationship that we have with time. We're telling time that there's not enough of you because my demands are too much. And therefore, I can't have the quality time. It's almost neglect.
Yeah, it is.
You're neglecting time. And saying that's almost, I mean, it depends how deep we want to go here, but that's almost abusive on yourself, that you're setting yourself up to fail in this way and continue to remind yourself of, I have no time, there's not enough time. And we're like that with people. We don't have time to give to people, but yet time is the infinite, abundant constant that there's in this universe.
Yeah, and it's an amazing, great question. And I'm sure you asked that. It's like, and you alluded to the fact that it's actually almost like abusing yourself. I'd actually go one step further and 100% agree. Yes, it is, because this gift of life that we have, right? Literally, like if you were to watch your life in a timeline, like a time lapse video, like your embryo, you're being conceived, you're born, you're that child, where we don't have any gadgets. Well, my age anyway, we don't have any gadgets, and you're just jumping on a bike and you're playing football, etc. And then you're going through education system, and then you're going through that fear or expectation of finding the right partner and loved one and boyfriend, girlfriend, and all that kind of stuff. And then if it's right for you, you're settling down as a family. Like, can you imagine if you watched a video, a time-lapse video of yourself, and you actually holistically, maybe this is a bit too deep, but let's just go there. But if you holistically actually looked at your life in that retrospective way, and then you're the actual director of the movie, and you can edit scenes and you can delete scenes, etc., and then you can understand and know where to navigate. Time is on your side, I guess, is what I'm saying. Time is not actually against you. Like people keep talking about time, but actually time has a natural marriage with energy. Like time, you can give someone your time, but actually I would challenge, I'd rather somebody give me their time and their energy, and I'll explain the difference. Because I can be on time to meet Viraj at when was it, last Sunday, when we were doing the recordings for the YouTube channel? Was it the week before? I am even losing track of time, literally. But when we met, so I could have met up with you and done all the activities with you that we scheduled to do, but that's time centered. But then I could have actually made a choice how much energy I give to you. Do you see what I mean? It's time. For me personally, time is not enough. If somebody gives me time, I give some time. That's not enough. I have to be energetically present in whatever we're talking about, and completely be consumed in a good way, and about what we're actually talking about. So it's time and energy, I think, is a duality that goes in.
Right. So if that's the way we're reacting to a person, if someone's in front of us, we've created the time to be there, and we give them the energy. Now, let's say the time is the person. Are we giving our time the energy?
Yeah.
Or are we just creating a to-do list of things and saying that we've not got enough time, and there's never enough time, and our whole life becomes about we have no time, and that impacts our relationship with time because we never value time. We see time as the burden almost in that sense.
Yeah, and this is let's just go deeper now because we've just 5 minutes now. But go back in history, time didn't actually exist, right? A book that I finished, The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle, talks about if an animal asks another animal, what time is it? They'll be like, they look pretty stupid. They'll be like, well, what are you on about? Time is irrelevant. But actually think about that in a deep way, right? I'm talking about pre-sundial, pre-moon, looking at moon phases, etc.
Time in itself, as we know it, is a construct. Because you leave this planet, time doesn't exist.
The human-made construct, which we need from a practical perspective to actually navigate through what we call life, and to add some context into what we do and work and business. And that's why we have the 7 days and the rest days, etc. And depending on where you are, Dubai has different rest days and UK has different rest days. And if you're in Switzerland, I think it's a 4-day week now right now. So great if you're living in Switzerland. So time is a human-made literally a construct. And back to the point, the question that you asked is that if we treat time as a person, how would that differ to an actual physical person? And why would you value or devalue time any different as to how you would value or devalue a person? Actually, you shouldn't, right?
But yeah,
because time, I mean, that's my personal opinion. I'm not sure what the audience thinks. I think time has every right to have the right attention that you would give to a conversation. Something else that came up right in the talk earlier on about business cards. I'm not going to go too much into about this now because go off topic a little bit. But somebody was talking about business cards. I think that somebody actually was me, to be honest with you. Started the conversation off, and I said that somebody gave me a business card on Friday, and asked me, "Have you got a business card?" I'm like, "Well, no, I don't carry business cards." And then she's like, "What do you mean you don't carry business cards? Like, how do you do business?" I just smiled at her internally, and then I smiled at her externally. I'm like, well, how I do business is how I talk to people. How I do anything in life is understand the person who I'm talking to. So understand the relationship, and the relationship I have is not with the business card. The relationship I have is with the person I'm talking to, right? So I think it's funny how people put things in front of you, whether it's a card or whatever it is, or because that's the way that society has conditioned them to I guess to receive that's how you transact communication. Or that's, I say the word transact because we're talking about business in that context, but all you're doing is you're sharing your energy, right? So if you smile at somebody when you're going for a walk or across the street, or a neighbor that you haven't talked to, somebody mentioned that they haven't talked to a neighbor for about 10 years and they met them in Tesco, and they had a great conversation with them. Well, your energy is your business card. Yeah, your energy reveals you before you even utter a single word. So why would you not give time? Why would you not treat time as a person, and why would you not treat your energy as a person? I think that's what we're alluding to.
Exactly. And then that's the next thing we touched on as well, is actually how many of our relationships are transactional based. Do something for me, I'll do something for you. And then we say there's a lack of meaning, versus it coming from a place of, let's say, a transformational context, or say a transcendence context, is actually, I can do something for you and I can do it without any expectation of anything in return, and be completely detached from an expectation of something in return. And how heavy are expectations when we are in relationships? Let's just take, I mean, people's the obvious one, but let's say money. We have an expectation of money, that money brings us certain things, and when it doesn't, we get upset. So we can either spend something, we can spend some money on something, and then we can justify it by saying, oh my God, it's really expensive, and and all this kind of stuff. And we can really create this expectation. Like how many people have bought really expensive trainers and then are afraid to wear them?
I think you've said so many things in there. I just want to unpackage, if you don't mind. So
yeah,
you started off with talking about if you do something for someone and then they do something back for you.
Yep.
I think, yes, there is a place and time for that, because you get paid to do a job. So therefore you're receiving money in exchange, like a wage, for example, or you're a business. It doesn't make a difference whether it's product-based or service-based. You're providing a service or selling a product, and therefore, obviously, there has to be an exchange of money, which is another word for exchange of energy, right? We're just defining currency as money. And obviously, back in the day, and I say really, really back in the day, when the barter system existed, there was no money. There was no concept of money. There was just an exchange of energy. And actually, money is a construct, right? Is a human-made construct. So in some countries in the world, I remember several years ago when I went to Kenya, where I was born, in Mombasa, the guy on the beach was like looking at me. I was thinking, what's he looking at? He's like looking at my shorts, and he's asking me how much. I'm like, what do you mean how much? They're my shorts. And he's like, I'll give you these carvings, these beautiful carvings, right? It was like a chessboard and animal pieces for that. I'm like, what? You'll give me that for that, and you don't need any money? I was like blown away that that's still happening in this day and age. So, and obviously that's the barter system, but there's so much. And what you also alluded to is that there's the other side of it, right? Whereas there's a modality of service, and if you want to, and I say this in the humblest way, anybody who's listening wants to embrace spirituality. I'm no expert. I'm definitely no expert. But if you want to enter spirituality, the whole essence of spirituality is what are you actually? Well, apart from why are you here and who are you? What are you here for? And then the third layer, which is the most important, is how are you serving others? Then there's a purity about that, right? You're not wanting anything back. So there's two extremes to different spectrums, if you like. So one is where you have to transact because you're providing a product or service, or you're in your day job, and the other one is who you are as a person. Yeah. Are you a giving person, or are you a taking person? And if you're a giving person, you've probably done some kind of charity in your life, and you don't need to tell anyone about that you've done charity, because that's then the ego. That's the ego coming. that's a whole nother topic, right? That's literally another whole nother topic about the ego.
Definitely.
But
I do want to pick that point. I just want to say a few hellos. Fatima has joined us, Deepak's joined us, Prakash General's joined us as well. Great to see you guys. We're just debriefing on our latest session on auditing your relationships, and we're just talking about Manoj was sharing about money and value exchange and transactional exchange. And you're right. I think there's a place where there is a give and a take. Yeah, as in, you go to work, you get paid for your work. That's a transactional relationship, and sometimes, even in that scenario, if we expect more, we could fall into that trap of our work doesn't give us what we want. But then sometimes that, well, you're being paid to do your job. And then when we have that extra expectation is also where we can fall into that trap as well. But then as you're talking about from the service perspective and that modality of service is sometimes, I think the key word is the moment we build up expectations is where we can then look at a person, a place, or a scenario, and that affects the way that relationship almost occurs for us. And then we get hooked, and then we're under the effect of it rather than just taking ownership of it. And again, audit, just having the awareness of it, right? I know for me, one of the big things I had was at work, I was putting so many hours into my old job and expected more. But then I look back at it and I was like, well, I was just doing my job. I was being paid for the service that I was hired for. So it wasn't the job in a way, it was just what I'd created out of the job, thinking, well, I'm doing all of this, but I was still fulfilling my responsibility. But then sometimes when we create these uncommunicated expectations, I think that's what can potentially damage a relationship. And that's when we look at, say, people in that sense as well, is that we say one thing expecting another, but does the other person really know what you're expecting or asking?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I didn't want to go down that particular route, but I'll mention what you said about the job, because I'll mention it because I've just had a few recent conversations. So some people treat their job as a mundane job, right? And then you've got, which is crazy, and I'll tell you why it's crazy in a second. And this is where the light bulb will switch on for everyone. I have been through 10 redundancies, survived 15 redundancies actually in my 17-year career, survived 10 and been paid out 5 times. When I say paid out, I mean compromise agreements. I think those of you guys are HR experts know that it's called it's settlement. It's called settlements now, right? Settlement agreement. Now, I can never take a job for granted because I wouldn't wish that on anyone. So what you guys call mundane, there's people on the other side of that spectrum who are fighting to pay their bills and survive. And what you think you're in a mundane job, actually in their lens, you're thriving. But in your lens, you're surviving because you're comparing yourself to not having this pay rise or not having this job title or whatever you want to call it. Now, it's like that famous image that goes around on Facebook and Google about the 3 people looking at a game. I can't remember exactly what it describes, but it's like looking through a fence, and you've got and it's equality image. I'm pretty sure you've seen it, Raj, and everyone's seen it, where you've got a person looking there, then you've got a person helping someone looking there, then you've got a person in the wheelchair who can't see it because the view's blocked, etc. And the lens that you see through life through is your lens.
Yeah.
But society has conditioned you to compare with others, right? And that's where the expectation links in, because you have an expectation of, I should be better. Well, if you want to be better, then look within. You can be better, right? And hang around with people who are better, who are aligned with your core values. And I say better, not in a materialistic way. I say
elevated.
They may have just been further on the journey. That's probably a nicer way of putting it, like than you are. So I aspire to, if when I want to go deeper into spirituality, I obviously know to hang around with certain people. If I want to go deeper into becoming successful in business or career, I know already who those people are, and where to spend my time and where to spend my energy in. So we're always good. I mean, let's be really brutally honest, right? I have expectations every day, so do you. But because one of the guys mentioned that for you not to have an expectation, you're actually saying, I have an expectation of not to have an expectation. Okay, yes, that's true. And I think what we're saying is that expectations and judgments are a dangerous thing. And if you can control it, and shift your consciousness to have an aspiration, and then an opinion. So I guess I'm just, this is me personally. So I replace the word expectation with aspiration. I replace the word judgment with a thought, right? Or an opinion, because an opinion is neither negative or positive. It's just how it's received and how it's actually projected. Yep. So if you're giving someone feedback, and the feedback comes from your heart, and it comes from not from your ego, and no one needs to be around when you give the feedback to someone individually, and you're trying to actually help that person, him or her, and empower them, then that's coming from a place of pure energy, right? You're doing it for good, if that makes sense. But if you do it and you purposely, if you're a boss, and those managers who are listening right now, and if you've got teams around you, because it happened to me before, where I got bullied when I was at work, which sounds crazy, right? A guy talking about getting bullied at work, but hey, we go for the same stuff as women go through, right?
Yeah.
Any women listening. But I was just going to say that we've got a topic coming up actually on time bullies, later on. And I think what I was trying to say is that it doesn't matter if you're a male or a female. Like, everyone goes through stuff in life. Everyone goes through things. Every single person on this life, I guarantee you, is going through a battle that nobody knows nothing about. About.
But I think the key thing with that, as you were saying then, some such great examples there, is until you do an audit of that, you don't have the awareness of it. So you're going about life and being at the effect of certain relationships, but the audit is missing. Like, just getting that awareness of, okay, this is where I'm at with this situation, this workplace, this group of people. Because for you to identify, to get to the point where you know who are the people that are going to help you spiritually, you've got to take stock of, okay, what's in my space? It's kind of like doing an inventory in a shop, right? What have I got enough of? What am I missing? What do I need to get more of? And now, where am I going to get that from? And
it is.
I think that's something that we neglect a lot if we look at people again. Like, sometimes we expect a certain individual or a certain group of people to be everything for us when they may not be the right people. So why place that expectation on them? You set yourselves and other people up to fail, rather than saying, you know what, for this scenario, this is how the relationship is going to be. It's, this is the caliber. Do I need someone to care for me? Do I need someone to provide me some character, consistency, whatever that is? But then look around and say, okay, well, I may not need to lean on this person for this, but there are other people that I can go to here. And then you create the exchange on that side of things. But so often, I think the mistake, and probably what we've been taught, I'm just letting you, Raj, on the screen, we're letting someone else join us live.
Hey, welcome.
Is that we make the mistakes of expecting certain people to be everything for us, when they may not be the right people to do that.
And that's a fascinating point. Hey, Yuvraj, you're the first person on this Facebook live debrief that we've welcomed on. But it was feedback from a couple of women who mentioned it 2 weeks ago. So we're listening, and we've parked our own egos, because everyone has an ego. Just reality check: if you're a monk listening, believe me, you have an ego. Everyone has an ego. Monks obviously have a much more deeper understanding of how to contain the ego. So we're all human at the end of the day. We're just talking about God, I don't even know where to start, Viraj. We talk about so many things. We just talked about you mentioned something I was going to mention.
You, Raj, come here with a clean slate. What was your take on the meeting that we just had? We just briefly shared a brief synopsis of a few of the areas, but what's there for you?
Yeah, I think.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling me over. I mean, like, it was a very wonderful session. Like, many wonderful insight from everyone on the link. Like, it's truly mind blowing. Mind blowing. I just don't know where to start.
No. How about starting from telling the audience where you're actually connecting from?
Yeah. Hello everyone. I'm Yuvaraja. I'm from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And I've been following this Mindful Minds Club for almost 3 months. I'm not so sure, 3 months. Okay. Yeah. So I've learned a lot from this club, and I will like to invite any man out there who wants to have a judgment-free space to come over and be yourself.
Yeah. No, we love having you, seriously, because you're consistently showing up on and you're not letting the boundaries of time zone and we talked about time at the end of the hour. You're actually empowering yourself. So we really respect and value your connection and your share, every 2 weeks. So thank you so much for that. I think you're literally the furthest distance away that we have in terms of time zone. I think we had a couple of people from Spain and India, is it as well? With Viraj. But again, I think an interesting point that Yuvraj mentioned is he mentioned the word space. So the reason we created Mindful Men's Club is not for us. It's really for men who want to share, who don't want to share, who just want to dial in and have the video off. It's okay. You want to converse in communication over chat. That's okay. And we created a space, and the space is your space. It's not our space. And the reason we created it is because each one of the men who are behind Mindful Men's Club, that's Viraj, that's Havan, that's Tilak, that's Sagar, etc. The reason we've created this space is because each of us have gone through a battle, just to leave it there, in our own journey, whether that's from anxiety, mild to extreme, whether that's on the other side of the extreme to actually nearly committing suicide, So we cover everything, and there is no topic that is actually taboo. And the reason that we exist is purely because of our sister group, which is Mental Wealth, and we wouldn't exist without them. So always very, very grateful to our sister groups. If there's any women listening right now, and or if there's men listening and you've got women in your life, please head over to the sister group, which is called Mental Wealth. So Mental Wealth, not mental health, Mental Wealth on Facebook. And because they're doing wonderful things. They're doing the same thing that we're doing, which is just to provide a space for a community to come together, to share, because nobody wants to be a statistic to suicide. I'm not going to talk too much about that because the sun is shining and I don't want to go sort of too deep into that subject, but that's the truth, and that's the essence of why we exist, and why we show up every Saturday, because you guys show up every Saturday, so we have to show up every Saturday. So you're keeping us in check. I can't see any comments or anything, questions. So if there is, just ask it.
I'm keeping an eye out on that. We've got a few people on live with us now, and let's just keep going. So I think in terms of like this particular subject, Yuvraj, like auditing your relationships, like what was it like? What expectations? I said that word again, but coming into the session, what was auditing? What did you think auditing your relationships meant versus whatever you've taken away from the meeting itself?
I think like relationship is like how is when talking about a relationship, it's not about relationship with others, it's a relationship with yourself as well. Relationship with energy, with money, with basically relationship, our relationship with everyone around us, including ourselves. And for me, I mentioned auditing your relationship is like risk and mitigating risk, identifying risk and evaluating risk in the relationship, how you want to manage the risk, and then so that it won't affect the relationship badly.
Really great way of looking at it, actually. Like it's almost the risk management of it.
That was very unique, right? I wasn't expecting that. That was very unique. But I like that because it's a pragmatic approach to what we said earlier, which is how you're spending your time and energy, and where is the risk, and what is the mitigation. So, for example, if you know that somebody that's in your life is not serving you because they're not on your same energy, frequency, and vibration, then what is the risk in you continuing that conversation with that person or persons? So that's a beautiful way of actually describing it, because it is a risk, right? It's a risk to them because you're fanning their flames, but it's a risk to you because you're losing energy and time in an area where it doesn't serve you. So actually that is a really nice way of identifying it.
And guys, may I highlight an issue because like I believe that there's a conflict here in the relationship between duties and rights. So often people, when they highlight their own right in a relationship, often the relationship will perish. Whereas when they focus on the duties, that what they're supposed to do in the relationship, that will flourish. So I want to know your opinion on that, duties versus right in a relationship.
That's an interesting one. Do you mean? Okay, that's an interesting one. Do you mean duty, Yuvraj, in a sense of like, let's say, your duty as a father or mother or sister or brother, or do you mean that, and also do you mean duty as in your spiritual duty, so your service? Because it's yeah.
I'll say the prior, your duty as a father versus your right as a father. You should able to distinguish that. So I want to know your opinion on that.
It's like I like where this is going, because it's establishing boundaries, it's establishing agreements, but also being detached from the outcome of it. But the father example is such a good one, because this came up in the conversation when, particularly when you have kids, they're not from you, they come through you into the world. You don't own them.
We'll say that again nice and slowly, because one of the men on our group mentioned it, and obviously we don't talk about the details of anything that we talk about in our Zoom sessions, because it's unrecorded and it's private, unless somebody private messages us and says, hey guys, you can mention us, etc. We want. But one of the men shared it. That's such a beautiful thing, right? Let's just kind of pause and reflect on that. So children, children don't, don't
comment here. Children don't come from us, they come through us.
Absolutely. That's such a beautiful way to express it. So children, I mean, can you even, that's such a powerful, this is resonating with me so much, because if you understand and acknowledge and are aware that children come through us, there's just something pure and spiritual about it, right? And that means that, for me anyway, it means something different for everyone. It means that my footprint, my vision is not my children's vision, meaning they're coming through me. And when you come through something, you're passing through, right? Like somebody passes through. It's like a journey. It's like an evolution. And one of the men mentioned it as well. It's like parents have this expectation of what their children should become, but actually it comes from a place of love, but it's just misinterpreted and mistranslated and misguided, because all they're trying to do is foster their maternal instincts in having that protection mechanism, saying, Manoj, don't try and do this business because it's not safe. That's because they never were business people themselves. It's not a bad or good thing. It's just protection mechanism, right?
Yes.
So there comes a balance between, well, you need to break free. Like, you actually need to break free of who you are. And I was watching a video from School of Bhakti, which is the educational, I'm from Watford Temple, and they were talking about nature and what is your nature? Like, that's such a deep question. Like, what is your nature? Like, who are you? Like, who are you meant to be? Like, meant to be, not as in other people's eyes, who are you meant to be? As in, who do you want to be, actually? That's a better way of putting it. Who can you be?
When someone asks you, who are you? You tell them what you do versus who you are.
Yes.
And
it's interesting, isn't it? If somebody says, "Who?" So who are you? I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like my religion, or my job title, or yeah? It's just, but that's normally what people expect and they answer for, because no one goes in deep saying, right, okay. I mean, it's quite rare for someone to say, so who are you? Okay, sit down.
It's kind of like with that question, it's like we're allowing the world to fit our words, how we see it, versus actually saying who I am as my word is how the world is going to treat me. And it comes back down to Yuvraj's point, the key relationship is the one that we have with ourselves. So who are we for ourselves before we are appointed titles of being a parent or being your job title or a friend or whatever? Like, even when it comes to the whole time and money thing, is how are we managing that relationship to ourselves, and that what we say of who we want to be is at the forefront of what we do, and therefore what we have around us is coming from that space. Whereas it's usually the other way around. We're externally trying to fit into different things to try to find our place, but the relationship we're at the effect of rather than being at the source of. And taking ownership was the word that a lot of people were sharing, that taking ownership of who we are in the relationship with whatever it is that foundation to actually have more powerful relationships, and then just checking in with where are we at with who and what and where. And then how do you be in that process?
Well, far too often in life we're concerned with OPO, other people's opinion, And feedback is a different subject. So I'm not saying you don't get feedback, but other people's opinion, you know, you've got that uncle or the brother or sister or daughter or son says, oh yeah, you know, you can't do this, or you can't make £1 million, or you can't go into spirituality, or you can't do this personal development course. They are the people who have the most insecurity. And it's not to blame them. Actually, if you're in the mode of service, it's your duty, I would say, to actually empower them to see what they can do, because they're just a mirror of what, or you know, of what they see, right? So it's just a powerful concept. But going back to what Yubar said about risk, just want to touch on just one point, because this has come to me right now, is that when we will come out of this situation, and I never mentioned actually the word C word, but you know what I'm talking about, this situation, the lockdown, etc. Like, if you were to do a risk assessment of the current situation, and then you did a risk assessment, let's say, with hindsight in mind, how would you feel, think, and be if you came out of this situation and you didn't do a single thing to actually improve your life? Like when people say to me, Manoj, and I'm not going to go into it, but Manoj, I don't have any time. I smile inside and I smile outside. I'm like, you know what, mate? You've got an abundance of time. Let me show you where your time is spent, and let me show you how much time you have. And it's just like a reality check, right? It's just a reality check. I've been doing so much introspection, you know, lately, and I know everyone has on the Mindful Men's Club, and everyone watching, is that I'm sure everybody wants to come out of this situation that we're in, reflecting back, being a better person, whether that's a language they've learned, whether that's a new job, or whether that's excelling in the current job, or whether that's just keeping your job, right? There's this dial, right, where you're either in a surviving mode or you're in a thriving mode. And unfortunately, you will fluctuate between the two, because that's just what life is. You can't control, to some degree, what life throws at you, but you can control what you do with the time that you do have right now. But yeah, so just wanted to share that's all.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's very useful insight. It's a very deep insight. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Okay, so what I can say is duties stems from responsibility, from the intellect, whereas rights stem from the agenda of the mind, which is from selfishness. Do you agree?
Say that again slowly.
Duties,
I like this question. I love this question. Go for it. Say it again, Yuvraj.
Duties stem from accountability, like intellect, whereas rights stem from the agenda of the mind, selfishness. What's your opinion?
I think that's the point earlier about your purpose and ego. You have certain set roles, responsibilities that are given to you, and you fulfill them. But when it comes to the rights and the expectation and wanting the fruits of it, I suppose that's where the expectation, the attachment, kind of then can be a slippery slope. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be rewarded for something, but I almost feel that when we do something in order to, and we may not get that, it can play mind games with you.
Entitlement, you mean the word entitlement?
Yeah. It's like, I will do this and I expect this in return, versus I will do this because it's something that I feel like I want to do, or if you have a role or responsibility that you should do, but then not. And again, it's defining the relationship, I suppose. Is it a transactional relationship? Is it a transformational relationship? Or is it a transcendence one? But it's catching where you can get hooked from the ego perspective, where you almost expect or demand as something as a right, versus actually knowing what you are entitled to versus what you feel you should be entitled to. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, it's like what you know, I think from my perspective, duty is something that, what is your duty as a whatever role you're playing. So whether it's a sister, brother, mother, father, husband, wife, that to me is your actual, your duty. And underneath the umbrella of duty comes accountability and responsibility. And then right for me is actually, it's almost like the word is dispersing in my mind because it doesn't belong. Like define right. Like, do we have a right to do something? If we take action and we're good at it and we put in the work, we do have a right for it, right? But it's not a God-given right in that sense. Like there is no blueprint saying, I mean, technically, like right fits with me if it's a right to be a British citizen, for example. Let's just say, right, that's my right because I, according to law, that's governed and I've earned, not I, my parents, etc., and I've got a British passport. So for me, that's right, but not right in a sense of expectation, because what right do we have? Right's a really interesting word, and you've triggered something in my mind there. Whereas I think duty sits quite nicely; it fits quite nicely with my own personal understanding of the word duty. And I think right can be anything you want it to be. Anything literally you want it to be, as long as it's coming from growth, a place of growth. If right comes from a place of wanting, then that's where the ego comes in. That's just for me.
Yeah. Very well said. Thank you. Very well said.
There's an interesting question.
I love that question. It's got me thinking.
It's such a deep question. It's an interesting question because what do you have the right to in this world? Yeah. You have the right to think freely, right? Yeah. You have the right to channel your energy and time in any way you choose and feel. You have the right to live the life that you have in the way you want it. You have the right to reinvent yourself every single day. So that's kind of my version of right. But yeah, I'm not sure if that helps, but yeah.
I mean, yeah, God, you're really, this is kind of like, okay, there's a circle of influence that you can think, but then there's also the rights in terms of like the construct, because if you look at it geographically, your rights will vary from country to country, but yet there's still an inherent freedom that you have of choice. This is a deep question you've asked. My mind is going like, whoa.
No, but it's an amazing question, an amazing point that you just brought, because you're right contextually based on your geolocation, to your geographic location, right? Whether you're in India or Africa or in Pakistan or Sudan or wherever you are, right? Your right is actually governed to a lot by things that are outside of your control.
Yeah.
Like, and isn't it fascinating? Like the people in the most stricken, poverty-stricken countries, like when you guys go, I'm sure you guys have been on holiday and you've just been like in awe, thinking, oh crap, I'm wearing all these branded things, right? Like I am right now. And that's my materialistic side in me. And then you go to a country and there's a child and you stare into the eyes of the child or an adult and they haven't had food for a day or two. Like that's like, where does your right come into that?
Yeah.
Like is such a deep subject. It's such a deep one. So right, I think is 100%. It differs to where you are, your environment. But in terms of like right for everybody who, let's just say, is not in a underdeveloped country, and isn't, let's say, whichever country you're in, it doesn't really make a difference. But if you've got access to the internet and you've got a roof over your head, yes, then the right becomes very, very, very different to a right with somebody who doesn't have anything, right? So therefore, if you think about it from that level, then you have a right and an obligation. Let's go one step deeper now. Okay, so you have a right and an obligation based on that context to actually empower others who are less fortunate than you.
Yeah.
And why would you not do that?
Yep.
It's as simple as that.
Absolutely.
That's your actual right, knowing that other people don't have that right.
Starts with gratitude.
Gratitude, yeah. Yes.
And it's fascinating what we can convince ourselves of when we think about But to your point, you've raised about the right to do something. In we have all the free will in the world, and yet under certain constructs that's limited. But even within our own kind of smaller echo chamber, or let's say sort of innermost circle, we can still act up sometimes to expect certain things and almost feel righteous in certain ways. Whereas actually, what I'm really getting is the real freedom is do what you can to the best of your ability and take full ownership of it, whichever way it goes, so that if you need to clean it up, you can just clean it up. Sometimes we inherit situations that weren't our doing, and yet be so right about this has nothing to do with me, or just say, all right, cool, let's just clean it up and move ahead, rather than spending so much time and energy focusing on that versus actually where are we going with this, right? Here's
a question for you guys. Now you really got me going, right? Here's a question for you guys.
We're going into overtime.
Well, I'm just going to say it, share it. So you talk about getting ahead, and as soon as you said getting ahead, you know what came to me? So I've already visualized my funeral, right? In a nice way, in a good way, not in a morbid way. I'll explain more.
One of the 7 minutes.
Yeah, well, it's a bit deeper than that. So I've visualized my funeral. I already know who's gonna say my eulogy, if him or her are alive, and if they're not, then who the next person is. That's to the detail I've done it. Do you know why I've done that in a very simple, humble way? Is because we're all gonna leave this place, right? So when we leave this place, how do you actually want to be remembered? And that's the question I ask myself. I'm far from perfect, believe me. I trip up every other day, but I just want to remember by one single thing, which is I try to help people. That's it. Nothing profound. That's it. So I think talking about right, it's like that's if you have something to give to someone, whatever it is, and you can help someone in the journey, then why would you not want to empower them and lift them up? So it's like I challenge, I was talking to a couple of CEOs, millionaire CEOs, right, last week. And I said, are you successful? It was a loaded question, right? Obviously, because I was trying to invert conversation. And they said, what do you mean? They said, define sex, not sex, sorry, success. define sex. Define. Yeah, that's a different. Actually, we've got a topic on that. Maybe that was a plug. Maybe that was a plug. Naturally, the universe just made me say those words. So what do you mean by success and define it? And I said, well, it's interesting because you're a multi-millionaire and you're pretty successful, but I already know that you're unhappy, right? And he said, how could you possibly know that? I'm like, let's have a coffee if and I won't get into the details of that. So he was very, very unhappy, both of them. And I just asked him one question. In your success, in the journey that you've been through in life, I just asked him one simple question. How many people's lives have you touched and enriched? Not enriched in monetary terms. It could be knowledge. It could be taking the shirt off your back and giving it to someone who needed it, whatever it is. And they couldn't answer that question.
Yeah.
Not that they haven't, but they probably have at some point, or I would like to think they have, but they haven't done it to a level where it just came at them, if that makes sense. So that's what I mean by time, legacy, and energy. And yeah, I mean, it's a question we should all ask us, right? Ourselves, like, what is the legacy you want to leave behind? And it's quite simple. It's like, for me, it's like, what is the impact you're creating in other people's lives without anything in return? And because when you leave this place, you're not going to be here to acknowledge it or see it, right? Who cares if there's a statue of you or irrelevant? Your dust, your energy, yeah? As we know, energy cannot die. So you're transforming, transmuting, and transcending. So therefore, if your consciousness still is alive, and it will be in the ether, would you not want to be connected to some small degree about the timeline that you left behind? And that timeline that you left behind, would you not want to reflect on it and think, okay, I tried to humbly help in some small way a few people along my journey. And I think that's spirituality for me defined.
Yeah. Well said. Very well said.
But that's another topic. Sorry.
Yeah, but then, Manoj and Viraj, when you mentioned the word rights, it's kind of subjective manner, because like what is right for Viraj might not be right for Manoj, and what right for Manoj might not be right for Viraj. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So that in so many ways is a red herring and something that we build up from the place of ego and attachment of expecting something in return for doing something, and again, this kind of goes in. Yes, of course, there are certain things that, this is another rabbit hole. But yeah, as people, we do have certain rights based on where we are. But then also sometimes the fact that it almost has to be defined kind of goes against the whole principle of it. Does that make sense? But yeah, I think we can keep going on this subject for ages. I think this is one to reflect on and maybe.
It's definitely one to reflect on, and I've got no idea how long wow. 1:45. How long was this live supposed to be, Raj?
We said up to an hour. We've hit an hour.
Have we hit an hour?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you can do shout outs and answer any questions on the chat, but I think we can literally carry on talking. But
no, all good. I think let's wind up for today. And really, you're right. Thank you so much for coming to the Zoom meetings and being and coming on the live and for sharing this, and again showing up every other week from Malaysia. There's a lot of things you could be doing, and we're really grateful that you're here with us and continue to be.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for calling over. I joined without any expectation, so I'm kind of happy that I'm able to join you guys today.
Yeah, no, and we really appreciate and comes from a place of gratitude, you sharing, because our mission is literally just to save one soul at a time. And yeah, we really appreciate your space and everyone who contributes towards the Mindful Men's Club, the people who show up on the Zoom, the people who actually don't show up, and massive supporters behind the scenes by liking, sharing our videos or whatever. And if it resonates with you, obviously don't do it superficially like people do on Instagram, where you're like posing with a Porsche, whatever it is, or Bentley. I mean, we all know that that's fake, right? Or most of it's fake anyway. So just be real, like keep, be authentic. And I think for anybody listening, I'll say it again, if there's men listening, we're regular guys like you. Most of the people on my Facebook know me. I was one crazy guy growing up. I'm just a regular guy trying to do something to help other men who I know are suffering massively in this space. If you're a female, and it's not about suffering, let me rephrase that. It's about creating a space to have a healthy conversation, and it could be about personal development, tools, techniques, meditation, or it could be you've got this tornado in your mind and you don't know, and it keeps spinning around and you just don't know who to talk to. You'd be shocked. The men on the Mindful Men's Club have shared things that they've never shared with their family or friends ever before. So that's how real and how deep we get. We don't record the session, we never will record a session, and we'll never ever charge for it, because it's nothing to do with business whatsoever. We all could be doing things on our Saturday, and the sun is shining. I don't know where you guys are, but in Harrow, the sun is shining here, and I'm looking forward to my walk in the park. But just a massive shout out to all the men and women, and a massive shout out to our sister group, because we would not be here literally without them, Mental Wealth. So please go check them out, like and follow them. And I think on that note, Raj, if you want to say anything else, just have a blessed weekend, everyone.
Yep, absolutely. I think if anything else, just want to say our next Mindful Men's in a couple of weeks, we're looking at the topic of Find Your Why, which is going to be another, no doubt, deep one. Yeah, Yuvraj, again, thank you so much, Manoj. Always a pleasure, guys. Have a great Saturday. Catch you all soon.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.